Good afternoon, everyone, or morning or afternoon, depending on where you are in the time zones. My name is Carlos Corral. I am the artistic director for the El Paso Film Festival, and we want to welcome you to our very first panel. Unfortunately, we wanted to do these live and in person this year, but instead we're going to opt to do it via Zoom and stream it live for everyone. And of course, this will be recorded, so in case you missed it, you can always tune in anytime. And I want to go ahead and introduce the Texas Film Production Panel. So in this panel, we're actually going to discuss a lot of the impacts that Texas film productions have had due to COVID-19 and also how we're going to move forward. As always, it's always we need to have safe sets, especially when everyone comes back to work. So our panel here is going to discuss some of the things that they have either already experienced or some things that they want to advise us on. So I want to go ahead and introduce everyone. Let's go ahead and start with Taylor Hardy. So Taylor, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Taylor. I am in Fort Worth. I'm the Associate Film Commissioner and Marketing Manager. So I work at Visit Fort Worth as well and kind of split my time between the two areas. But I've been at the Film Commission for about 4 years now. So good to talk with everyone today.
Great. And of course, next up is EJ Enriquez, who actually happens to be from El Paso, has since moved to Austin, and is now a very successful cinematographer. So EJ, I'll let you take it away and tell us more about you.
Hey, y'all. I'm EJ, former El Pasoan or proud El Pasoan for life. I'm in Austin, Texas-based DP. I do a lot of docs, narratives, and commercials. More so in that order, and just I have a full round experience on set, so I'm here to give my advice on that.
Great, awesome. And next up, we have Lindsey Ashley with the Texas Film Commission. So, Lindsey, I know you've been working with the Film Commission for quite some time now, right?
I have, yes. Yes, I'm Lindsey. I'm currently the Deputy Director at the State Film Office. Previous to that, I was a production consultant and location scout. So for about the last 15 years, I've been at the office, and it's a really fun job. I love being able to work with all of our different regions and all of our different filmmakers, and just kind of helping to promote the state as a destination for production of all types, all shapes, all sizes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lindsey. And I know we have let me see here, if she's logged in here. We have another panelist coming in. I'm trying to see if I can get her in here. But of course, our other panelist is Hilary Pierce. She's also a documentary producer based in Marfa, Texas. So as soon as I can get her in, I will try to add our fifth one.
I look like she's coming up.
Oh, is she coming up? Let's see. There she is. Cool. Hello, Hilary. We were just talking about you.
Hi. Apologies for being late. I had technical difficulties.
It's all good. Actually, we just finished introduction, so if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Hey, everybody. I'm Hilary Pierce. I'm a documentary filmmaker. Previously in Austin for 7 years and currently in Marfa, but I've worked all over. So thanks for having me.
Great. Thanks for coming, Hilary. And actually, I'm kind of glad. Part of the reason you're on this panel too is because not only have Texas film productions, narrative ones, have different protocols now, but I actually wanted to get your input as to how documentaries are going to continue. As you know, and maybe we can kind of start on this topic a little bit. Documentaries. I know there was one or two shooting in El Paso in the springtime, but then unfortunately COVID hit and everything shut down. So I'm actually wondering, you as a producer for documentary film, what have you seen in regards to protocols for documentaries? I know it's a lot different for narrative film since more, people are on a set and they have zones and different things. So I'm just curious as to what kind of protocols you're trying to set up for documentary filmmakers.
Well, it's obviously so different for each production. And I've actually only had one potential shoot since COVID started, and luckily it was with only one subject. So it would have just been myself and the director who would be shooting and the person we were interviewing and shooting with. So, we all three talked about it, and we were planning to get tested and to wear masks. But it actually didn't end up happening. But if, a larger shoot, with more people involved or something like that were to pop up, it just has to be customized for each potential shoot, which is just really, it's difficult, but you kind of do the best you can within the circumstances. I know some other documentary filmmakers have resorted to shipping gear to their subjects and giving them instructions to film themselves. And I believe, there's been some kind of Zoom interviews and things like that. So it'll be really interesting to see documentaries that come out in the next couple of years, because I think they're likely to have some interesting virtual footage that was captured not in person by the filmmakers.
Yeah, and moving on from everything you mentioned there, Lindsey and Taylor, I wanted to ask you guys, as film commissions, what have you seen in regards to documentary film production? And I know it's good that a lot of people will register with you guys to let you know, okay, we're going to be on a production here at this time and date, and this how many people we have. But I'm curious how documentaries can work closely with the film commissions, like the Texas Film Commission or the Fort Worth Film Commission.
Well, at the state, I will say that since we were able to reopen in early June, it started out real small, real lean and mean. So it was like commercials, segments, there might have been some like smaller reality show productions, and documentaries were certainly included in that, because it was, the fewer people you can get, the less equipment, the fewer locations, the better. The ways in which we've worked with them so far is helping them to understand the Open Texas checklist for media production. There are parameters, just like there are for restaurants and gyms and museums and libraries and various business sectors. And so we worked really hard in the beginning of the summer to try to make sure that these were things that, while more rules and parameters aren't always the easiest things to do, these are feasible things that productions can do in order to keep their cast and their crew safe. And the ways in which we've been helping them primarily have largely been through our health and safety vendors. If you need PPE, if you need to know about testing sites, if you need a safety and compliance officer for your crew, if you need to find set medics or even intimacy coordinators, they have kind of a new job description these days. We're compiling all that information on a very helpful COVID resources page on our site. Our production registration process is a new one. We are inviting productions to register with our offices just so we can kind of know who is where in the state, and that will help us to communicate safety bulletins or statewide mandates that come up. And that might have an impact on production plans or, schedules. So there's those ways that we're working with them. And then we're also just trying to make sure that, if people have any questions about not just the rules for the state, but maybe there's rules that for like SAG actors or, different unions and organizations, we're trying to make sure to communicate that as well.
Yeah. And Taylor, how about yourself?
Yeah, kind of similar to what Lindsey said. I do think a lot of the types of productions we're seeing are changing. We've had a lot of music videos and then reality shows, which kind of like Lindsey mentioned, have that documentary feel. Anything where you can keep the cast really small, or like with the music video, it's a band. So a lot of them are already living together, quarantined together anyway. So it's a little bit easier because they don't have that, nerves about being exposed to someone outside of their main group. And then we've helped productions. Like Lindsey said, we really just try to communicate any new mandates that come down from the governor, and then asking any questions. We do a lot on social media. We're really trying to model the way and share photos of sets where everyone is wearing masks or has hand washing stations and hand sanitizer set up, just to try to normalize that behavior. I think the more that people see it, the easier it is to remember to follow all of those steps. We've also tried to provide resources when we can. We offered free masks, up to 200 per production, for anyone that needed them, while supplies lasted. And I do think we still have some masks available. And then just kind of checking in on our local production companies and being there. We might not always be able to help the problem immediately, but we want to keep our ears and eyes on what's going on in the community so we can be that resource and advocate for them the best we can.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you guys both mentioned that, because I actually just got done with a couple productions this week as well, and where I was producer. And what I noticed is that, normally whenever we have a set medic or a tactical medic, it's because, we're out in the elements, hot sun or very cold night, things like that. But this time, we're having set medics or tactical medics, so to speak, be our PPE officers. And I'm going to have, 12 people on the set, bring masks, bring hand sanitizer, bring whatever we need to do to follow safety protocols. And luckily they all have those things based on the state of Texas. But then if there's extra stuff, I know, like for example, for ours, I called each individual crew member and asked them to go get tested a few days before we started, and then just send me the results. So the good news is that everyone was negative. So I was able to create a small production bubble. But even then, I made sure to let everyone know, but still 6 feet, wear your masks. And if you need anything, our tactical medic is right here with extra PPE gear, whatever you need. So that's, and this was just only for, an interview. That's all we were doing. It's just an interview. So, 2 camera shoots, sound, lights. But we're noticing that just going forward, these are the kind of things that now productions will have to budget line items for, just, safety testing. And that's the other thing too. I can tell you that getting everybody tested is always important. The only thing that I haven't really liked about it myself, I'm complaining, this is just like a little thing, but jumping from set to set, it's like you have to get a test every single time just to make sure, okay, I didn't catch anything on that set, I'm good to go for the next one. So, getting those molecular tests through your nose is just like, okay, this is the 6th time I've done this. Let's jump to the 7th one and everything like that. But just wanted to share, what's going on, in some Texas film productions for commercials. And actually, I wanted to use that to segue to EJ. So EJ, both you and I have worked in the narrative world as well. So you as a cinematographer, I'm sure you've moved on to other projects in Austin, but I'm actually curious to hear what's going on there and how you guys are hopefully moving forward, or not yet. It's kind of a weird question to ask, because cases were starting to go up, but they were still low in the spring, and now in the fall, I feel like everything just keeps going up. So is it becoming more dangerous to go out there? But yeah, tell us what kind of protocols you've seen or you've implemented on your own sets. Oh, unmute yourself, EJ. Unmute yourself.
Yep.
There you
Sorry.
go.
There we go. I just said the most grand thing. Anyway. Like you mentioned earlier, the narratives, kind of had a little bit of a drop off, and obviously there's a little bit more control of narratives in terms of script and control and content and whatnot. And I've definitely seen that portion of my work drop off a lot. I know that some bigger shows in town are starting up. I know Panic finished up, and I'm sure Lindsey and Taylor can talk about this in terms of the commission side of things. But my work has mainly been a lot more of the documentary, actually, kind of since this is a world-changing, global affecting event, that I feel like a lot of people are kind of going more for the topical things and doing more of the documentaries and a few political ads. So it's very interesting to see that. And to go into the other question about just protocols, there's definitely a certain set of standards nowadays, with our COVID compliance officer, like Lindsey was mentioning, someone who's kind of a central figure to kind of not only create, certain protocols and guidelines, but to actually enforce them as well. Although it is a lot to say from my experiences. I've worked a few gigs now since the pandemic broke out. that it is really a team effort to make sure that everyone is really following the rules, because obviously you've got crew, even if it's a marginalized smaller one, that's, for safety reasons, there's still multiple people that that are hard to oversee for one person, for an officer to oversee. So I just want to stress that as well. Like, I think it's really important that we have these protocols like checking your temperature, getting tested regularly with rapid tests, either before and while you show up to set, and kind of waiting for results with those rapid ones, depending on the gig. Obviously, the washing the hands, the gloves, the sanitizing of the gear. There's a multitude of different things, but I think it's important that people really watch out for themselves and the crew members, because you have a lot of different factors. Like, maybe if it's a subject or talent that may not necessarily be so privy to all these things, or it hasn't worked this year, that's something interesting, because they're going to kind of come in and kind of be like, okay, well, I'm just going to do my thing, and everyone's like, whoa, we've got a system in place. So I think it's really important to oversee those different things. But I think the majority of things protocol wise are testing. Rapid testing seems to be the biggest thing for sure, is making sure everyone's got some form of a tangible thing to show, like, I'm currently negative, and just showcasing, because obviously sets are full of people in very close quarters. Usually, especially during the summers, maybe here in Texas, you can't really shoot outside the entire day. So it's kind of controlling all these different parameters and whatnot. So if that kind of answers anything.
No, yeah, and this is kind of a question for the whole panel. I'm going to go through some of the chat and just kind of let you guys know what some of our attendees are asking. So one of them comes, and I'm sorry if I don't say your name right, Chilimbe. He's actually asking, what's the proper time, or like, how long are you making the bubble for production? So I can tell you that, like, for our production that happened earlier this week, I had everyone get tested Thursday, Friday, and our production was Tuesday. And I just make sure to tell them, hey, don't go out this weekend, don't do anything dumb, and I'll see you guys Tuesday morning. So for us, it was about 3 to 4 days. But what do you guys recommend? What have you seen the other productions do as far as creating their bubble before going into production?
I think that it will depend upon the size and scope of the show. Like EJ mentioned, while things were smaller and lean and mean early on, we have like some large network TV shows that are prepping, and one of them even started filming earlier this week. And so, because while we have the rules for the Open Texas checklist here in the state, if there are union rules on top of that, they can get pretty strict. And that's when they'll kind of divide their cast and crew into zones or pods. And so, zone A would be the most vulnerable. That usually includes the cast and the talent. Those folks are getting tested pretty much daily. And then zone B might be the people who interface with the cast, and those that are in zone A. And I think those folks get tested like a few times a week. And then there might be zone C, who's not allowed to interact with zone A. And those folks, I think, are getting tested weekly. So that's just like while they're in production. But the bubble leading up to it, to kind of touch on EJ's point, there are recommendations. Some people are following them, some people are not. It really is a bit of a social contract with each other. And, if one person gets sick, then everybody kind of has to pause, and it puts the whole show at risk. And so there are recommendations that are being made. A lot of projects do start, like the scripted shows and things like that, on a good, clean Monday, and we'll recommend that you, same as you did, Carlos, don't go and do anything for the days leading up to it. But, there are people who are going from show to show, just like you said, and they're kind of having to promise with one another that they're being safe and doing everything respectful of everyone else.
No, yeah, good. No, great answer. And how about you?
I'll add real quick too. Mm-hmm. Or go ahead. I just want to say I wanted to think a tangible thing. This 3 days have definitely seemed to be the thing, like you were mentioning. I think within what we're seeing is a 3 day before period with a safe at home guarantee of like trusting those people, and then potentially rapid test day of.
Yeah, and Hilary, how about you for documentaries? What kind of bubble pre-day are you seeing or recommending?
I have been more in the post-production phase lately. And I've been, really lucky that the director I'm working with, she and I have been in the same social bubble. And then we're working with an edit team remotely. So that's been kind of new, but not totally, undoable. So we've had, as I said, we were planning to have a shoot, but it was just a pickup, and we didn't end up actually needing to do it. So she and I have just been maintaining our bubble and then working remotely with our edit team. So, that's kind of worked out for this stage. I know that we're extremely lucky to be in post-production at this time. I can only imagine how this changed so many projects.
Mm-hmm. And again, just kind of another question that this one comes from Anthony Salgado. What do you recommend? And this goes to all of you guys. So I'd love all of you guys to chime in. It's one thing for larger productions to start adding tactical medics or COVID officers or PPE officers to their productions, but what advice or what can we tell independent filmmakers? A lot of them don't have larger budgets. I try to tell them at least get tested and wear a mask first and foremost. But what do you recommend to productions that do not have large budgets? Should they not film at all or wait? Or what do you recommend?
Taylor, do you want to jump in?
I think with every industry and filmmaking is, very similar to this. It's just being flexible. We've had a lot of locations that are not open to filming right now, and I think that it's changing scripts. And so when people are, looking for low budget locations, it makes it even more difficult. So I feel like we've seen a lot of script rewrites or going more minimal. Maybe you're only shooting in one location and you're able to build out more sets there, able to decorate the set differently and getting a little more creative with camera angles. I mean, it's hard to say that you should wait and not film because I think that filmmakers are so passionate about what they do and like we're out filming right now. I think it's maybe just looks a little different than it would have in the past.
Yeah, I agree. I also think that independent filmmakers are more conditioned to be lean and mean as opposed to like the ones that are having the hardest time getting back up and going are the bigger ones that do have a lot of people and do have a lot of resources. But our independent filmmakers it's a lot easier to, if you're already used to working on a shoestring budget with limited resources, limited people, that might even be a few less variables to contend with. So I think that, and those folks are just a little bit more nimble. So I would absolutely encourage them to keep going. And there might even be additional screening and exhibition opportunities for them and their work at this time when not as many Hollywood-sized productions are completing and are available.
I would actually add to that too. I think, basically after like March, April, I saw a lot of rental houses and facilities like studios actually wanting to try and incorporate as many people to come in small and sensible and safe places because they kind of were just bleeding, money and they needed some form of money to come in. And so, in terms of it being more capitalistically motivated, it really did motivate some people to come in because it was like, hey, we'll give you half rate on the studio or half rate on the body or XYZ. And it kind of helped out, it was a win-win in this terrible situation. So, yeah.
I also think within the documentary world, I've kind of been joking like, oh, we're going to see a flood of archival based or animated documentary work in the next few years. And I'm joking, but I'm not. Like, I think there could be a lot of, new ideas that come out of this. I love, what is it? Necessity is the, what is the saying? It creates invention or, it forces invention. So I think I think we have to get creative. And I think it'll probably result in some interesting pieces.
Yeah, I'm curious in terms of aesthetically, like how this distance will be portrayed, because we can't necessarily get so close as like a DP or cam operator. Like, I've obviously, depending on the doc or the gig, maybe had to get a little close depending on the situation or the room. But I feel like it's going to be very somewhat voyeuristic in kind of the scope of, things that are made. It's going to be a little further back, a little reserved, which is very interesting to see.
Yeah, and if I can kind of also go on to a couple more questions that our attendees are asking, because a lot of them are very curious about this. One of our attendees is also asking, I know a lot of filmmakers, and I have to tell you this too, like most of us have filmmaker friends and we're watching their social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, and we notice that they're getting back to work, but some of them are not being very safe. So what do you do in that situation? Do you call them out, or do you just tell them like, dude, you really need to be a lot safer?
Yeah, I think you call them out. I don't know. I feel like it's up to us to hold each other accountable, and they're just putting others at risk and putting our industry at risk, giving everyone a bad name. There's a good way to do this, and Lindsey and the gang have worked very, very hard on making sure that we have that information and know how to do this well in the right way. So there's really no excuse. I think you have to call each other out.
I agree with Hilary. I've definitely been calling out a lot of friends and people, and I think you just have to be totally honest with yourself and know that this is obviously something bigger than an individual and an individual project. Even, this is about a community, and this has killed people. Like, I've lost a family member to this. This isn't some hoax. This isn't some fake thing, and I think it's kind of a weird thing that kind of aligns with the American exceptionalism that, our project's different. We'll be fine. We're going to be safe. But I think people really have to take in these, hard facts that you have to realize this is bigger than yourself or your projects. So I totally condone calling people out, and obviously if they're a friend, I think that should be easier or something, because you can really tell them like, hey, why just have some discourse, you know what I mean? In some kind of form or fashion.
When we work with a new project, we're requiring them to submit a safety plan or at least outline the steps they're taking, and absolutely referring them to the Texas Open Texas checklist as well. But I mean, that's our first step. If they don't have a safety plan, we can't help.
Yeah, the safety plan has definitely been, that's a great point, Taylor, something that we have been absolutely interested in for all the same reasons. And I mean, it even goes, to like where we're trying to bring these projects to like communities like Fort Worth or Marfa. Like, we have 150 what we call film-friendly certified communities. And, these industries really have the power to kind of operate as a form of economic recovery for a lot of places that are losing business and tourism and other ways. And so, like, when we bring these productions to these communities, we want to make sure that we have an understanding as to the level of seriousness that they're taking this safety awareness. And there's already safety plans out there of all different kinds and all different sizes. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can, of course, customize things based on your shoot and your circumstances. But there's a lot of resources available. The unions are being very open about the kinds of parameters that they're putting forth in their plans. You don't have to be a union show to implement some of those best practices or like model them to fit your specific production. The Open Texas checklist for media production, it's about 4 pages long, and it talks about the different phases of production. And so that could be your plan if you don't want to have to draft one that's brand new. Please reference that. And the other thing too is that kind of like what EJ said, this industry has kind of grown accustomed over the years to just being like, we ask for exceptions and workarounds, and but we need this, or we only have time to do that. And like, safety is a place where you just can't cut corners. I think one of the biggest shows that got shut down was like the Robert Pattinson Batman production in London. I mean, he got it himself. The show was on hold. And so there's a lot at stake and a lot of time and a lot of money. And then when things do get shut down because people aren't taking safety seriously, then you start to lose windows of availability for talent and for crew. So, if people want to continue to have job opportunities, then they do need to take this very serious.
And actually, jumping on that, Lindsey, I know I have another question here from Farhan. He's actually curious when there are delays, like what happened with Robert Pattinson and the Batman. How are insurance companies insuring those delays? Because obviously, if you put a show on hold, that's 2-3 weeks. People aren't working anymore. So, do they go find other work, or are they temporarily covered? You guys as film commissions, what have you seen productions do when it comes to adding an insurance rider for COVID-19?
That's still a work in progress. I mean, there's been some shows that have not been able to come to terms, and really big shows with a lot of resources that have not been able to come to terms with some of their insurance companies about covering those kinds of delays. There were a lot of productions that were underway when the shutdown happened back in March and kind of going into the summer. And so they didn't have those kinds of clauses, the pandemic clause in their insurance agreements. And so a lot of those projects are still kind of in litigation as far as how that goes. But it's a really big risk, and there's not really a simple answer for that yet.
Yeah. Oh no, yeah. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say on the legal front, I've also been provided with some like COVID specific release forms for documentary use that I think is a lot more complicated than just handing your subjects COVID release forms. It's kind of an ongoing conversation. You really have to make sure the people you're working with, the people you're filming, are truly comfortable in the environment that you've agreed upon. And I think as a producer, you have to, really communicate what the standards of production are going to be for that shoot and uphold those. So I think kind of going back to what we were saying earlier about holding people accountable and calling people out. I mean, I think it's probably a lot easier for me as a producer, being able to, if I were working with, a larger crew than just myself and the director, I would, have to call out any infractions upon the agreed upon dynamic. And I know that can be sort of just a different dynamic than these large narrative productions or even commercial productions. But I did want to bring up the COVID release forms because that's sort of a unique to this moment thing to consider if you're filming in nonfiction.
No, and that's interesting you bring that up, Hilary, because actually I've seen it more on commercials. Not so much narrative or documentary productions, because those sometimes are a couple of days, but on commercials, since they're one-offs, I remember, I won't say like who the client was, but a production came into town and, I was hired to do location audio, and I went out there and there was no mention from the producer that I had to sign a waiver until I showed up on the set, and he said, here. And I asked him, what's this? It's like, this is the COVID waiver. I'm like, why didn't we talk about this before you hired me? Like, cause also too, I know, our IATSE Local 484 has also been telling its members, hey, be careful with those waivers. Make sure you read them. Don't sign them if you don't feel comfortable. But that kind of, luckily we had a talk, and I had to talk to the company lawyer and tell him, I'm not signing this, but here are my test results that I got 2 days ago. I hope that's good enough for you. And luckily we were able to work it out. But just to let you guys know, as film commissions, sometimes commercials do pull that just because they don't want people to know, like, oh, here's a COVID waiver, and then people might back away and they lose crew members. So I'm just curious what your advice would be to freelance workers out there if they come up on that situation.
I think you handled that really well as far as going back to the producer and saying, I don't feel comfortable with this because, um, that's a very unfortunate position to be in where it's like you've committed to doing the work, you're showing up for work, here's your schedule, here's your job, and then here's the surprise. And so they're like, approaching that conversation as a dialogue instead of like a one way is absolutely a very mature and responsible way to do it. Um, the the role of the producer, we had a panel a couple weeks ago at the Film Commission with some production companies that have been underway, and I was really impressed by one of the producers on the panel who talked about uh, making himself available to his cast and crew for that dialogue, not just about the waiver, but kind of like what you're talking about with some of these infractions that you might see with your fellow cast or your crew. The there's even more of a reason now to think about safety and kind of like a good line of communication with those that are in charge. And as a producer, and if you're lucky enough to have more than one on the show, then, you can kind of, when you're putting your projects together, determine who could be a good point person for this. But your cast and your crew, they really need someone who they can go to talk about these things without fear of losing their job or being judged. We do have an email address at the Film Commission. It's called Media Production Safety at gov.texas.gov. And if you don't feel like you have people on your leadership team for the different projects that are available to you, you're welcome to send us an email to this email box. And, we're happy to do what we can to provide you with some guidance on how to navigate those very tricky and uncomfortable situations. It's been something that we want people to have an outlet if they don't feel unsafe, as opposed to just feeling like they have to kind of quit the job or walk off the show. So we're happy to help folks navigate that situation.
I'll add to that real quick, because there have been, to the flip side of that, a few gigs. There's a recurring gig that I'm on, which has been nice during all this, that has been very clear and transparent about all of the waivers, et cetera, and stuff. They actually have a policy where if you actually get sick on set as well, they will pay you to a certain degree, like of days missed and stuff. So there's also the flip side of stuff where productions, I think, they take into account the situation, and they actually will provide their own kind of insurance to a degree of like, okay, well, in the event of, XYZ, they'll be able to take care of you. And also, addition, that gig I'm referring to has its own COVID hotline on the call sheet. It's, very clear and transparent. It's like, if anything is an issue with, which is a general thing on many call sheets, whether it's like something with harassment or, XYZ factor, it's like, but this is specifically for COVID, which is nice, that if you have any issues, safety or whatnot, with anyone, including subjects or locations, you can call immediately and kind of get some kind of tangible feedback, which is nice. So there's a flip side too, where I think depending on the gig and the company, you can see both sides of it, where maybe they don't tell you the day of until you show up, or, they might have something more set up. It's obviously kind of a random wheel depending, but in the life of a freelancer. So.
Okay. Those are all great answers. Anyone else want to add on that in case anyone has experienced anything? Okay, good. If not, I'm going to go ahead and move on. But again, if just to all you attendees as well, or anyone watching, if you do get put in that situation, there are resources to help you guys. It's as easy as pulling a call to the Texas Film Commission, or even asking the producer, just telling them how you feel, and it's okay. We all want to try to be safe. It's not, we're hoping it does not cost you a job, but your health is much more important, if I can just reiterate that to everyone. And speaking of which, this is another question that I have from our attendees. So this one is more towards Taylor and to Lindsey. For state and local resources, is there going to, you think, be any kind of economic recovery grant when it comes to film production? And I ask you guys just because I'm wondering too about like the Texas film incentives. If we're trying to attract work back to the state in a post-COVID world, once, and then again, this is hoping that once everyone's got the vaccine and we're all going back to work, is there any plan from state or local resources to try to get film production going again?
That's a good question. I know in the past we've done a film festival grant in our office to help with travel expenses and submission fees. And when the pandemic hit, we took those funds and rerouted it into our Creative Industry Relief Fund. So we partnered with the United Way of Tarrant County, and any creatives were able to apply for that. And we were able to give out $300 grants. It was musicians and filmmakers. We still have that open for donations. And as long as we continue receiving money, we'll put out more grants. And any funds that would have been for like a film festival travel grant would continue to be given to filmmakers. But that's not necessarily specific to productions like you mentioned. I think it's kind of evolving, and we always want to be there to help, and we'll spread the word when we hear of anything. But that's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah, that was a really fast-acting program, and that was really nice in Fort Worth to put that together pretty soon after the shutdown happened. And we saw that in a lot of different communities. I think we highlighted over 50 different communities, a lot of them being in our Film Friendly Network that were offering small business grants. So if you had a business or you were a vendor, there were grants that were being offered on a local level. Our Texas Moving Image Industry Incentive Program, we're currently working from the appropriation that we got in the last legislative session. And this appropriation that we have was for this particular program, and is there for us to utilize going through August of next year. Our legislative session will happen in January, and we are very much gearing up for that. That's actually what I was working on a little bit this morning before I jumped on here. But it is usually a pretty complicated time to go to the state and ask them for money. But as you can imagine, it will be even more complicated, not just for Texas, but we're also hearing that from our fellow film commissioners around the country and around the world, trying to get funds for incentive programs in general is a little, it's a bit of an uphill battle, even more so than it would normally be. But we're going to do it, and we're going to go, and we're already putting together information about how many jobs have been created over the last 2 years, how much money has been spent locally, how many businesses we have in the state that work in these industries. And that's what we've been doing during the while the industry kind of quieted down over the summer. We've been doing a lot of what I like to call cleaning out the attic and our database and with our data that we're putting together. So I'm pretty excited about the information that we have to show our legislators. And one of the benefits that we do have is that our industries, they're kind of like tourism, but sometimes can work even faster, where they spend a lot of money, even on smaller shoots, in a really short amount of time. And so we really are looking forward to being seen as a form of economic recovery here in the state.
No, and that's great to hear, because I know filmmakers, we want to get out there and continue creating content. And so actually my next question is leaning more towards Hilary and EJ. So as things hopefully start to get back to normal later, and hopefully in 2021, 2022, as we begin to recover, do you think that right now, because everything had shut down and funds are limited for certain productions, unless you're big TV or a big tentpole movie, do you think that's going to create a content hole where independent filmmakers can kind of fill it, or do you think they've been kind of affected by the same restriction of COVID, where no one's really producing content, and that's why people are going back to old stuff? I know that right now movie theaters are in a tough bind even though some of them are open, they're showing older films, nothing new. So is that going to create some kind of content hole for the next year?
I'm optimistic that we're in this weird in between, that we've been adjusting to the new way of doing things. And, once we kind of fully adjust and can start creating new content again, I'm hoping it'll even out. And I also know that a lot of people have been in the same boat that I've been in, which is I somehow magically landed in post-production during the shutdown, and we'll have new content for sale in early 2021. So I assume there's not, we're not the only team that is in that position. So I think there will be a lot of independent documentaries and potentially narratives that have, already been in the can and we're in post and are kind of getting ready for next year. I'm hoping that works out in our favor. I'm hoping that the market will be hungry for new content at that point, and maybe that will mean good things for independent filmmakers trying to sell films in this new landscape. With virtual festivals and virtual one-off screening opportunities. There's a lot that's been changing, but I think it's starting to hit a groove. And I'm just kind of hoping that we'll figure out the production stuff. But in the meantime, these things that have already been wrapping up this year during this time will be kind of ready to hit the market.
On my end of things, I definitely think there's going to be a little bit of a dip. But like Hilary said, I think that the luck of the draw, some productions were going into post. So there will be, a little bit of a dip. Nothing, I think, to the level that we were potentially thinking of at first. But I will say that I think like Lindsey was saying earlier, independent filmmakers are kind of used to these restrictions and kind of these scrappy, ways of just making stuff in general, that I think with that mentality and also the embrace of world change overall, like people now are used to being able to work from home and, have this kind of like change of perspective overall, that I think other companies will actually be more open and embrace non-traditional content, wherever that may come from, whether from more independent filmmakers or, subjects themselves. Like Hilary was talking about, like sending equipment to subjects, for example. I think there will be a general embrace and acceptance of this kind of change that will lessen that impact of that dip overall. So I think it's actually a good thing. I would encourage people to really reach out if they do have like a project or an idea, because I think there is a little bit of a hunger from normal companies, and providers. So I think they will be open to bringing something of yours into their realm.
Yeah, and Hilary, I think that's something that documentaries that are in post-production right now, I think, have a very big advantage. I know I have a couple friends who just finished post on a narrative feature. So it's kind of, I'm wondering, with kind of the lack of content, is it kind of I guess, I don't know if the right term is buyer's market, but for them to go out there and talk to distributors and tell them, hey, well, we're one of the few movies that's out right now. I think we can really get out there and get on people's radar. So what are you noticing? And EJ too, if you have anything in post-production, what do you recommend to filmmakers who are powering through post-production? What do you recommend for them to do as far as releases? Do they continue with film festivals? Do they go straight to a distributor? Do they put it out on, on Apple TV, Amazon Prime, iTunes, going the self-distribution route? What do you guys think is going to be the best approach for filmmakers?
I think it's sort of hard to say. Just like it would in normal times, it sort of depends on the project. I think you have to know your audience, your intended audience, and how to best reach them. In some ways, I think this may have leveled the playing field a little bit. If you don't have a form of traditional distribution, simply because people are tuning into their laptops and their, smart TVs to watch things. So if you can maybe self-distribute and funnel your funds into marketing, maybe that is a good opportunity for you. It sort of remains to be seen, I think, how things will play out. I think until we get through Sundance 21, we won't have a sense of like what people are doing or what, how the buyers are making decisions. So yeah, it's difficult because it's one of those things where under normal circumstances, trends change year to year. And you may think that you have a good handle on how things are done. And then it, totally changes. We've had so many disruptors in our industry over the last, 10 years, 20 years, with streaming platforms coming into play and theatrical kind of going up and down in popularity. So it's impossible to really be able to forecast, I think. But I've been trying to kind of, attend webinars and read blogs and just like stay in the know as much as I possibly can about trends in the industry. So I guess I would encourage anybody else to do that too. Lean into your support organizations, International Documentary Association, Austin Film Society, et cetera, that are really trying to be there for filmmakers in this time and let them know what's going on. So yeah, I wish I had a better guess as to what's going to happen. But I think if you know your audience and you kind of know what's been happening, you can make good decisions.
Yeah. And so finally, as we round out the panel's about to come to an end here in the next couple of minutes, but I kind of wanted to leave everybody hopeful as well. And I wanted to ask you guys, as this goes for all the panel, how can, with the times everyone going to streaming and content kind of, we're hoping there's going to be enough content for 2021. But what would you guys, as filmmakers, as people who work in the film industry, what do you recommend for film festivals to do? Like, how can we continue to advocate for filmmakers? I know sometimes it's, some filmmakers will just want to put their stuff out there, and to them, they might say, well, everything's shut down. There's no live stuff anymore. There's no films, there's no theater to show my movie. What's the point of a film festival? So I'm kind of wondering, and I can start with you, Lindsey, with the Film Commission. What do you recommend, or what have you seen festivals do in order to stay as a relevant path for filmmakers?
I am happy you brought that up, because one of the things I was thinking about when Hilary was talking was that I really don't want people to give up on film festivals. I know it's not as much fun because we can't go there and be in person and have that experience. And I think a lot of people have been thinking about film festivals from the audience perspective. So while it's really nice, festivals can have bigger audiences because they have further reach in the virtual space. There's also things that I've seen some festivals do, like they're still creating opportunities for the filmmakers to meet with the other filmmakers. Like I had a friend who was in a shorts block for, I think it was Deep in the Heart in Waco. And she said that they had these little like filmmaker Zooms for all the directors that were in that shorts block. So they still got to meet each other and like tell each other how they liked each other's work. And then maybe even collaboration can stem out of these opportunities. And the other thing too that I think is that I've enjoyed the most is that for some of them, even though they're virtual, when they're creating a sense of place, I find that to be really successful. I think the ATX TV Festival did that really well this year, where they were showing panels and screenings for a couple of days, but in between, when they were kind of introducing things, they were still featuring, like a shared menu of like things from local restaurants, or a themed drink where they would give you the recipe so you could make it at home. And so there's still kind of that sense of community, which is what everybody loves so much whenever they attend a festival. And I will say, and I'll end on this part, last night I was talking with some folks at the Denton Black Film Festival, and James Faust with the Dallas International Film Festival, he was saying how programming used to be something that was kind of subject to a timeline and to these release dates. But now programmers are a little bit more flexible. Like, maybe you've already had a premiere somewhere. Well, they're not going to rule you out as an option to be screened like they might have previously. So, or maybe it's a little bit of an older project that wasn't quite as relevant a few years ago, but now it's really relevant. So programmers are looking at things just a little bit differently. And so I don't want people to think that just because we're not going to the theater and experiencing these festivals, that they're not also reinventing themselves.
I'll also add, I love everything Lindsey said. And one thing that I think is a silver lining about all of these virtual film festivals is I know as a filmmaker, I think a lot of my non-film friends have no idea what life is like most of the time, or the things, they don't always attend film festivals. Maybe they'll go to a local one or something, but a good friend of many of ours, Lindsey and EJ and myself, Sarah Cook, who's actually, I think, here with us right now, she mentioned that one of her college friends came to one of her film festival screenings, and virtually. And I loved that. Like it was about bringing new people into the film festival experience that wouldn't ordinarily attend. So I would say from a film festival programmer and director perspective, that's such an opportunity. It's such an opportunity to bring folks from far and wide into your program and to kind of expand what's possible. So maybe we're missing the parties, but I love the virtual, happy hour with other filmmaker idea. But, maybe we're also bringing new people into film festivals and exposing them to independent films. So that's exciting.
And Taylor, how about you?
Yeah, this is for the first time ever we are co-hosting the Lone Star Film Festival with their team. So we've gotten a little bit more insight into what that will look like this year. And I think it's really cool. I know every film festival works a little different, but with Lone Star, you'll have access to all of the content for all 4 days of the festival. So you don't have to worry about timing out which screenings you'll get to, and if things overlap, how you'll make that work. I think that we have access to more content than ever. Then there are also a couple panels where we have people spread across the country, and they're still able to come together and meet. So it's access to more content in a way. And I think there are a lot of festivals that are offering tickets at lower costs and even a lot of free content. I know the El Paso Film Festival is using that model this year. So like Lindsey and Hilary said, there's a lot of people that maybe would never have gone to a film festival before that now have this access. So I think it's really cool to see. And hopefully some of those people will continue to stick with the festivals in the future.
Yeah, I'm hoping that if you watch El Paso Film Festival or Lone Star Film Festival, virtually this year, hopefully you one day want to actually go visit and see the people who put on this festival. And then finally, EJ, I want to get a filmmaker perspective. I mean, not to say that, Hilary is also a documentary one, but I wanted to get a narrative one. So EJ, what do you think festivals, what else can we do for filmmakers?
I think like anything, you can embrace the challenges and it'll breed innovation. I think Lindsey said that, or Hilary. Just really think about that because, you have these open avenues that'll bring different ideas, different people in. So I think just like anything, just really embrace the challenge overall, honestly, because it will hopefully, bring about some innovation. So, I mean, that's really the most is just kind of just take what you can and keep chugging along. And I think it's important too to keep creating content because this is obviously a very, it's a huge, I'm going to say the word unprecedented that everybody loves time, that really is going to showcase some history in the future. So I think it's important to really showcase the struggles, chronicle them, and just embrace every challenge.
No, those are great words, and I'm really glad you guys are all part of this panel, because I had so many questions that I've been wanting to ask people, and now I feel like this is a great way to do it. But I want to thank you guys, bottom of my heart, that we were able to do this, and I'm hoping, again, in next year, hopefully, if things are better in 2021, I'd love to have you all come down to El Paso in person, and I'd love to get back to watching movies, having drinks with filmmakers. And so I want to thank you guys all for coming.
Thank you all. Everybody.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Carlos. It was great.
Of course. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Remember, the El Paso Film Festival starts October 16th. Be sure to download our Roku, Apple, and Fire TV apps. The film festival is completely free, so we want you to enjoy it from the comfort and safety of your own home. I'm Carlos Corral, the Artistic Director for El Paso Film Festival, and thanks, everyone, for tuning in. See you next time.
Don't forget to vote.
Don't forget to vote. Don't forget to vote.
Vote. Early voting 13th in Austin, wherever you are. Look it up.